offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Builders Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builders Paradise has what you need.
Wow!
Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Builders Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts or call them at 466-4938.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Talk That Get Results. I am Webbo Herbert, and as per usual we're here every Tuesday evening with something that at least we think is of community interest and or of some concern. And if you think that you have something which fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, well, why don't you drop us a line, address it to the Let's Talk program in care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis. So give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and 01700. By the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Talk That Get Results. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on the numbers listed 1-869-469-1616 and 01700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that you're well organized, and when getting on the show, you take as little time as possible so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, we respect yourselves, and then respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem that's not within our broadcast standards, but we encourage you to always be forceful with your point. You can also follow our live video stream of this program on our YouTube channel at Vaughan Radio and our Facebook page at Vaughan Radio. Thank you all again for joining us, your voice in the community, Talk That Get Results. Conrad Niall Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and good evening to your hard-working staff here at Vaughan Radio, and to my colleagues, Mr. Fifield, a pleasant good evening to you, and to everyone who, by the various means, are in tune to this program. This evening, Webbo, again we gather in the name of the Lord to discuss the issues affecting the people locally and regionally. It's always my interest to be part of that conversation. I'm a person who likes to speak up for those who doesn't have a voice or sometimes afraid to talk. I hope I'm doing a good job in that respect. I like to feel like I'm a part of the working class, and therefore I echo their sentiments on this program, and I hope I'm doing a good job again in that respect. And of course, my idea of this classless society, which has been pondering my mind for so long, I like to advance that kind of feeling, that kind of ideology, because I believe, Webbo, that everyone should have an equal opportunity. We are all the same, doesn't matter what our economic achievement may be, and I think with that kind of attitude, we would definitely in some way have a better society. Webbo, I'm happy to be here once again. Let me hail up my friends in Connecticut and my brethren in Toronto who locked into this program every Tuesday. I welcome you once again, and of course I encourage the general public to be a part of this program tonight, to call in and put any issue on the table. And so, Webbo, once again, I just want to say thank you for having me once again.
Roger Fifield, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and thanks yet again for the invitation to be here on Let's Talk another Tuesday night. Good evening to my colleague, Naya. I want to say good evening to all those who might be listening and viewing via the various mediums. Good evening, special good evening to you. We are hoping, as per usual, that you would call, make your input, ask questions. We can learn something from you, and of course you can learn something from us. I would also like to say to those who might be mourning at this point in time, we're asking you to allow the Lord to be your pillar, your rock of and tower of strength. He would comfort you. He never turn away anyone. And of course, those who might be celebrating, we wish you a happy birthday and hope that you may live to see many, many more happy and healthy years. Webbo, I'm hoping, as I said earlier on, that persons would call in, as this program is an interactive one, and I'm sure that this evening discussion would be fruitful, as I know that there are lots of things that we can discuss tonight. Once again, thank you, Webbo, for the invitation.
Okay, I got a couple of things that perhaps we can discuss, but as usual, we'd like to know what you have. But before that, I'd like to say, a pleasant good night to Ted Hobson. Hello. Once I, say that, they know that we've got you, Ted. And everybody else, it's good to have you with us tonight. So what we got?
Webbo, just before we jump into the meat of the matter, with your permission, Webbo, I would just like to let persons know that our Easter camp, the Jerry and Ursula Fifield Memorial Easter Camp, is upcoming from the 16th of April to the 21st of April this year. So we are inviting all those who are interested. They can contact me, 668-0554, or they can contact Rasmin at 665-8452, or any other person, who you think you can contact to get through to us. Thank you, Webbo.
Well, just one was my concern. It's something that's been happening, which is, and I think the Prime Minister spoke about it. It's of interest, and I wonder why. And obviously great reasons why. The influx of vehicles into the Federation is something which is quite admirable, and because you hear so many people are saying things are tight here, there, and everywhere else, but still we see a lot of vehicles coming in. Is it something that the buyers of these vehicles know that we, the people who probably have such a platform like this, don't know? Is it really because of a good economy, or is it because of that that desire to be more independent? And of course is something we can look at and how it's impacting us. Or is it because simply the vehicles are basically dirt cheap? In these days, you can probably get a vehicle for $500 and bring it in from somewhere, and you get it here, and you wonder, well, why we used to pay so much money in the past? What is going on? But for sure, we can all say that there is a lot of vehicles on the road here on Island, and there is still a lot more coming in. And I hope that the government is making big money from those who are trying to get their license, and I understand that if they can speed up the process, they will make a lot more as it relates to people who try today, and sometimes they may not get another chance till 2 weeks, 3 weeks after, when they can have another chance, probably in 4 days time. I was once counseled by one of the drivers, one of the instructors, that that is perhaps a area where government can get a lot more money from, or have more of an income or revenue. But the issue of cars on the road, not a problem to me, but it is of great concern, and I wonder why. Of course, it is more concern of the bus drivers, because more cars on the road, less people travel by bus, and so forth. But I mean, it's the impact on the society and the economy is probably worthwhile discussing a little bit, I suppose. Mr. Fifield?
Yes, I believe that.
I know you said Mr. Fifield, and I know I'm very conscious of speak when you're spoken to and answer when you're called. But I wanted to just put this question in based on the point that you were making, and so that when Fifield addresses it, he probably can address and answer the question as well. So I'm hearing you, looking at the fact that the number of vehicles coming, there's a lot of vehicles already, and they keep coming. And in fact, I don't know if you heard the news item that we carried today, that they were reporting from the port in Bastille that a record number of 312 vehicles had come in on the last shipment. And the officer was saying that in his 2 decades at the port, that number, not even half of that number came in at once. Now, so as I'm listening to you, and you're talking about the buses, less people will be traveling on the buses, etc., 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 and I'm thinking to myself and asking the question, and trying to answer you when you're asking certain questions. I say, well, maybe it's called progress, as defined by not only the government, but citizens. So you go to school, and you had to walk, and then you had to do certain things, and you never had certain privileges. So you work towards certain goals, which are set. And one of them, since we are talking about vehicles, one of them is to get your own car, for varied reasons, and you move towards that, etc., etc., etc. And then, having gotten a car, based on what you consider good quality of life is, might be a house next. Then, when a lot of houses have been built, some people will start to say, well, what are building so many houses for, and so on and so forth. Now, I get it, that no matter what you do, some people have to complain, because there's all the days that when one man is happy, the other man is sad. So maybe, just maybe, that if one person is in office and a lot of vehicles are coming in, it looks like progress. So the person who is not in office in that position now has to say something negative, because people like negativity. So I'm just wondering how much of the questions that you're asking fit into some of those or suggestions. Fifi.
Yes, Webbo, indeed, I did heard that news clip on the radio earlier on today, and a number of things would come to mind when we hear that for a small country like ours, St. Kitts Nevis, at any one point in time, 300 plus vehicles, come into SKN, and I think the Premier would have said today that 112 was supposed to be coming across to Nevis. Now, we must look at a lot of things, the impact, maybe first, so with what was bandied about, recently, and probably still is banding about, that 2 calypsos actually were written based on that particular topic, and that topic is things not going well. Now, I want to believe that if things weren't going as well as some may think, I do not believe that we would have got that amount of vehicles all at once into the Federation. Now, a couple of things come to mind, as I said earlier on. The confidence that individuals would have in the economy, the confidence that the bank and the bankers would have in the economy and in the importers, and with their ability to repay the loan, if indeed that they would have taken a loan to purchase these vehicles. So we must look at that. We must also look at the environmental impact that these vehicles may have on the environment, bearing in mind that most of these vehicles are not new vehicles. The emission that they would release into the atmosphere, I suppose, based on the science, would have some sort of negative impact, on the environment. So we can look at that. We can also look at, what the government would realize in terms of, taxes, duties at the ports, the customs, and also what they would realize annually in terms of wheel tax that would be paid at the Inland Revenue Department annually. So all of these, I believe, Webbo, coupled and compiled together, there must be something that is, going well, if I can say that. People have confidence in the economy. The economy must, at least if we are to judge it on this single aspect, and of course, we cannot judge the economy based on one particular aspect, I know that, but if we were to judge it on this aspect, we would see an upward trend, in the economy, Webbo. I think it all goes well. We ask questions like, what happened to the road network? Should we build more roads? I know that the ring road, the island main road, in certain parts it might be difficult to widen the particular areas, but maybe it is time for us to maybe widen and broaden the island in terms of, we can probably look at the lower land, so to speak. I think I once heard that there was a road right here in the Long Point area that would have gone right around the island, go through the lighthouse, go straight up to Cox, Hanley's Road, Hickman's into Zion, and go straight around. I do not know if that's something that the government, would have something, maybe if not in the short term, medium term, or long term, they may want to look at in terms of, opening up Nevis. If that is done, give scope and rise, for investment. Persons would have, various maybe stores and businesses along that pathway. So that is something I think that, the influx in these vehicles over time, could cause. We must also look at, Webbo, to the impact, how the bus drivers and the bus association, how do they look at this? How do they view this? Do they view it as progress overall, or do they look at it as something that it's a drawback to their business? If more vehicles are in, obviously more persons would be driving. Simple means that the possibility is that less persons would be traveling on buses, and that, I think, would have a negative impact on the bus drivers, those who ply their trade each and every day for a living. Now, if that happens, the government, I know, currently are giving certain concessions, on certain paths for buses and stuff like that. They would probably have to look at it more in depth and probably see how they can keep these buses, so to speak, afloat. Because we know when, buses just don't or should not just increase the fees just like that, that have to pass through a particular channel and be sanctioned and stuff like that in order for it to, you know, go out in the public domain and be accepted and you know, quote unquote, for want of a better term, you know, be legal. You know, so these are a lot of things I believe that, you know, we would have to ponder on as a people, you know, see how best going forward. Another very important aspect to Webbo is the parking. We know that we in the smaller islands, Nevis for sure, we do not like to walk. You know, we are going to that particular store and we want to park right in front of that particular store. Now, it's a holistic.
If I feel, let me just get this and we'll come back. Good evening.
Okay. So what?
Go ahead, Fifi.
Yes, thank you, Webbo. You know, what is, we have to kind of look at it holistic, the pros, the cons. You know, maybe if more vehicles come and there's less parking space, someone may laugh at me for this, but it may mean that we'll probably have to park further away than where we are actually going. And if we do that, then we would probably have to do some more walking to reach where we actually want to go. And that, in a sense, you know, could be beneficial to us in terms of, you know, getting some more exercise, especially some of us who don't go walking and exercise a whole lot. And the health practitioners would tell you that, you know, it is important to walk, you know, walk is healthy and, you know, such like. So that's another aspect. So we have to really look at it and really in depth and stuff like that. And generally people would want parking space. I know that. What can we do? Can we build parking spaces like, you know, the US, like building type, and you drive and you park layers and decks up? Can we do that? Would we be looking into that? Would the landowners in Charlestown, there are some lands in Charlestown close by, you know, that they can probably clear and, you know, have some parking space. They may probably want to charge a small fee, you know, per hour, per day, per week, as the case may be, per month, as the case may be, and have some parking space. And in so doing, you know, make some monies that otherwise they would not make, and they are not making at this point in time. So these are all considerations that I believe that all and sundry probably need to look at.
You know, that's interesting to me. I had a gentleman accosted me some time ago in reference to that same vehicle coming in and stuff like that. But he had probably maybe a different motive. As he was arguing that there are too many vehicles, and perhaps suggesting that they should limit the number of vehicles per household, etc., different things and stuff like that. So I listened as I normally do, and then I said, well, I got you, and those are some negatives. So I said to him, is it possible you can look at it another way? Can it be tied to progress? He said, well, you could say that. And I said, well, and if it is so, then you can well argue that the government was very myopic in not realizing that the economic agenda and plans would bloom so much that they were caught off guard, not preparing roads, etc., etc. Well, the fellow didn't want to concede on that argument that is progress, but he wanted to accept that they were short-sighted and And then when he realized he was caught between a rock and a hard place, he said to me, I always believe I could help everybody.
Well, I think it's an investment when an individual decides to buy a vehicle, and of course it has deep repercussions for the economy. I mean, you may wonder, so many vehicles, are they really running the economy?
But
Here, because, I mean, all these vehicles, they require fixing. They have to be paying tax to the government yearly. It encourages people to go and get their license. To me, it's quite a stimulus, by an investment a young man or woman may make for themselves.
But you must also, first of all, in my view, Naya, define what is, in your view, a good quality of life.
Yes.
Or a standard of living. Because people are always going to try to move a step further. Right? And you have to determine whether or not that is the step they're or the avenue they're trying to get to is a good one. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening, Mr. Herbert, and your panelists.
Good evening.
Good evening to all the listeners at home and abroad. Now that statement about the number of vehicles as a sign of progress, that statement was made by Richard Keynes, Don't know you remember? So you see how much cars coming in. So now have the government considered putting in lights?
Putting in what? Sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they didn't get the last question, so could you go over the
traffic lights? Have they considered putting in traffic lights?
Mm-hmm.
It will have to control the movement,
But let me ask you this, caller. You're aware, though, that when the government puts in traffic lights, you have another problem?
Which one?
There are a number of persons who don't want to obey the traffic.
Then charge them.
So what I'm saying is, so we're going to end up also arguing about the violations that you are having, and maybe the horrific accidents you have by people running the red lights and stuff like that. So I'm just pointing out.
Yeah, well, look at it now.
Walk with me. I'm just pointing out.
Yes, go ahead.
That regardless to what you do,
It's done.
You are going to have issues as a consequence. And so whenever you, but this is what I'm saying. So whenever you do certain things, you ought to know and prepare and mitigate for certain things. Go ahead.
I was even thinking, public education. Now the financial institutions, of course, must be financing it because they are cheap, and it is difficult to get them out of the customs yard. You have to insure them first and license them before you could bring them out. So maybe if it was done on radio or TV, just a rough analysis. How much is it going to cost to maintain? Have you kind of young people? The friend have one, they want one too. If they had some idea, serious idea about what, are they ready for a car or a jeep? Are you ready? Because everybody wants progress. And they go through that. Now another thing, you could even give comparison, because I used to drive. And sometimes when you take your car to town, right? Now at the park, you up and down, you end up paying $5 to park down by Ramsdown. If people could see, look, maybe it might be better to rent your car on the weekend, because the maintenance is high, Use those who coming into town to work. Use the bus. And on weekends also you use your car. People people can be given ideas, things like that. Well, I have to decide. Sometimes I driving all around finishing my gas. Can't find a parking spot. So sometimes if things are explained to people, young people, all of us were young years ago, and they desire to escape poverty, because that's a sign of poverty, When you have a car, how to measure the number of households below the poverty line? Do you know the possession or non-possession of a car is part of it? Are you aware of it? Anybody aware of it?
No, I wasn't aware. No.
If you don't have your own personal transportation, and they're measuring the number of people who have transportation, they're considered above the poverty line because they're able to maintain a vehicle.
But I suspect assets.
Hello?
I suspect all assets will be taken into consideration.
Yeah, but for poor people, a car. When divisions have houses, then you have the number of divisions who are considered poor keep decreasing, even though the demand for social assistance may continue to rise. So there are other ways of looking at it. The first thing I think you should do, put in some traffic lights, because sometimes they have to turn up into junctions, right?
Of course.
And who can you pay? And lately, the fees have been increased. I think in some cases too much, too drastic. But at least you hear the report from the police, the traffic police. The amount of money they're pulling in. Who can you feel? But I think, have anybody ever considered putting in traffic lights in years? Are there junctions we just have difficulty getting out of? It has helped in St. Kitts. There are some places you're driving up by Baker's Corner, you can't get out. You come across by the gut, you can't get out. You don't do it, you can't. You understand what I'm saying? So once they do a traffic survey, go ahead and put them in. So it means that the distance between the traffic lights will have to slow down the vehicles and too. What about that? Because the minister has to go 80 miles an hour and you got to stop in 5 minutes. But they're not stopping it and while I sometimes think you should stop, but you say when you stop the importation, you're going to deprive some people who have been making preparations for it. Because when young people start to work, they don't care how old the mother house is, they want a car outside of it. And there is no going back, People measure you by what you have. And then when they order even some people that can't maintain. So we have to see what we can do to help them. And somebody talk about vacant lands in the town. You could park over Bad Village. I don't know what it is right now. I used to stay over there. Park on a pasture. Some of the pastures and make them parking spot during the week. And the government collected money because for $5 in Bastia. So think about it, because there is no stopping it. And to go answer when you can't bring in, it will affect the political decision in terms of our governance. So that's something to consider too. Well, then when you bring in a car, and they got car, and they got jeep, and no, they want poor people to get none. That's a rally inquiry. All right then.
Okay, thank you very much.
Webbo, I wouldn't be one to agree with anyone at this point in time to stop the importation of vehicles. What I would suggest rather is that in terms of the environmental impact is to probably stop the importation of cars that, let's say, are 10 years and older, and maybe gradually we can bring it down 9 years, 8 years to, I think, maybe 5 years. Over time that is. But before that is done, I believe that the public should be well aware in advance, so persons could make decisions in terms of what they are going to import and when, based on whatever timeline is given by the government. I think that is a consideration. As I said, that would help, in a positive way, so to speak, in terms of the environmental impact, as older vehicles, would have more of a negative impact on the environment. Now, in terms of traffic lights, I would want to believe by now, in this day and age, that the government is considering, installing traffic lights. And if they are not considering installing traffic lights, then they must be considering hiring more traffic wardens, more crossing guards. So in that way, more persons would be employed. So we could look at it in a number of different ways. What the government, maybe they need some public consultation, as the caller suggests. But believe me, caller, almost every young person, they know the impact. They know the cost of basically everything. They know that at some point in time they would have to go to the mechanic for, even if it is just for regular servicing, to change a part. They'll have to probably import a part. More mechanic shops would probably pop up. More persons would probably go into mechanic. So to me it's a positive sign, and I don't believe that we or anyone should stop the importation of vehicles.
Is an interesting topic. I don't know if you know or you're aware. They used to, or they still have, the same kind of debate about housing. You know that?
No.
Some people argue why he or she had to get their house. And the parent, you're shaking your head, Niall, so you know what I'm talking about, right? Because the parents live in a big house. The room is still there unoccupied. So the same argument that people are making, that people shouldn't get cars because of ABC, is the same thing they did for housing. It's called personal space in that regard. And then again, like I said, people define in their own terms what for them is A, progress, and B, a good quality of life. The other thing that I find is fascinating debate sometimes is one fellow, or maybe a girl, may call a fellow cheap. You go a little further down the road and you hear somebody else say that fellow they ain't cheap. What it is, the guy is choosing to do what he wants with his money, not what you would like him to do.
Exactly.
So a person finishes school, they get a job, they decide they want their own mode of transportation because it may have certain drawbacks in their view to public transportation. So what you're going to do in a capitalistic and free society, you're going to tell the guy he can't do it?
No, that won't work. That won't work. I can't be a part of any movement that would say let's ban the importation or slow down the importation of cars. It's perceived progress. But it's a huge stimulus, because everything the lady has said to me leads to some development or something else.
And the same thing with the housing too?
Yeah,
Yes.
same thing. The same thing with the housing.
So, if it is you're going to argue, are you going to put it to me in your debate that, well, you just creating an intellectual discussion. Well, fine, I'm out of it because I take intellectuals for intellectual discussions, right? And I'm not one. But the reality and a realist, that's me.
And some may argue that, it seems like the bank is quick to give a car as opposed to a business loan, a car loan as opposed to a business loan. But, I mean, if you look at a little further down the road, those who are making payments to the bank give the banks more money so that they can finance otherwise, And so to me, it's such a stimulus, and it impacts all aspects of society and our economic development. To me, one cannot say it's because the economy is good, people bring in cars. I believe any government that is in power right now, they would have been the same importation of cars. To me, it stimulates the economy, and so government should be glad that it's taking place, because I don't see no pile of cars over in the custom yard that people can't pay for, to say, well, they have brought them to Nevis and they cannot pay the import duty. I don't see that at all. The banks are always willing and to finance, not just buying the car, but to obviously make it roadworthy, license, and go on the road, and so forth and so forth. And to me, it's progress, personal progress, and it impacts, to me, the society, the economy, more the economy in a positive way. I mean, one could talk about the pollution that the cars emit sometimes. Well, they don't check for that in any serious way when they go test your car, because they don't have that thing that they clamp to the muffler until you start, and they can realize how much smoke you or the color of your smoke, and come to conclusion whether or not your car is roadworthy. And so that can be said over and over again, but once you ain't got no measurement of that, then it's quite elusive. But I don't see a problem with it, really. I mean, no one could have told me don't buy a car when I was 18 years old. I've been stealing my father's vehicle since I was like 14. And because yes, I want to drive, and yes, I want to be independent, and it would be a very suppressive notion for anyone to decide upon slow down or block the importation of cars, really. Build parking space and make money from it. It's all positive. It's all positive. I don't see nobody in Nevis living in the car. I know people in other countries live in their car. It's quite different, because in the city, I don't think the first things that come to someone's mind after they hit 18 years old is to buy a car, because it's so difficult to maintain a car, and the responsibility for having a car. They are more inclined to deal with other things, but at the same time, differently. I mean, I could be wrong in a sense, because in the black community it's the same way, but to me it's more difficult to maintain a car in the city than in Nevis or the Caribbean islands. Of course, it put more demands on the government for better roads, and more extensive roads, traffic lights. They would come in time. I mean, the traffic lights tend to find themselves where there's quite a lot of crossroads and so forth, like St. Basti. Nevis have one road that runs through town, and it's not too much an intersection that goes through Charlestown, really. And so I don't think it's something we're going to see in any immediate future, in the immediate future. But of course, with the influx of cars, it puts certain demands on the government, and at the same time, the government earn a lot of revenue from the cars, and they spend some facilitating the influx of cars, and so it's all good from my point of view. Of course, we got to be more careful on the road and try to prevent accidents, and that, of course, points down a different alley. But of course, I don't think anyone wants to cause an accident. So everyone would try to be in the best behavior as it relates to the car, especially when it's an investment, And another thing, people might say, well, you ain't seen the money going around. The bank taking everybody money because everybody have to pay a loan, because of their car. That might have some merit in it, believe it or not. But it still finds its way through the bank, and the bank is able to finance other projects. The truth is, I would like to see business loan more easier to attain than it is. Maybe, car loans seems very easy to get. Business loan is a lot more rigmarole and delays and problems, really. But I think it works hand in hand, really.
I believe.
Before you come in, Roger, let me take this. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, let me turn on the radio. Have you heard what is happening in Antigua?
No.
Gaston Brown has decided to increase the licensing fee of the vehicle by 40%.
Which equals to $100. Which equals to $100. He's taking it into consideration. They haven't done that as yet.
Thursday is supposed to go to the house today. But what he's saying, look, if you want better roads, you got to pay for it. And the counter argument is, well, the wheel tax we are paying supposed to be able to help to maintain the roads. So, do you think our government might follow his example and increase the licenses? That's a question.
Yes, and really there's nothing too really wrong with that. You bring in a car, so you must expect to bear the expense of having a car, and of course government must earn its revenue. So I wouldn't really go to really beat up on a government who would see the opportunity of earning more revenue based on the fact that more vehicles on the road and there are more demands on the government part to facilitate those vehicles. I wouldn't beat up on them on that.
I would have said on another earlier program that maybe one of the things that the government can look into doing is to increase the wheel tax. When we look at it, this is something that vehicle owners would be paying on an annual basis. Now, when the vehicles, when they come in at the port, the duties that you pay at the port, it's a one-off thing, assuming that you pay all of your duties at the customs there and then upon importation. And I would have also said that I believe what the government should look into doing is to lower the tariffs, so it would encourage persons to buy newer vehicles, and in buying newer vehicles we would have less emission, because we have to always go back to the environment, and the impact of on the environment. So where you lose at the port in terms of taxes and duties that would have been collected by the customs, you now would be getting it back over a period of time. Not all at once, but over a period of time. Because when 10 persons, for example, import and you pay $100 each, that's $1,000. But when those 10 persons have to pay $10 for the next 10, 20 years, then we could understand how you would make it back over time, not just all at once. So that is something I believe that the government could look into. It would, as I said, it would encourage persons, importers, to import newer vehicle because the vehicles out there, they are relatively cheap. They are relatively cheap. And persons knowing that they would be paying less at the port, I believe that they would go for the newer vehicle. Now, if I can just go back a bit, when you spoke to the ease of getting a loan for a vehicle opposed to that of a business. In my humble opinion, I believe that the bank would look at the vehicle, and the ability for you to repay over a lesser period of time. So maybe 4 years, 5 years. Now, for the business loan, depends on the magnitude. You probably have to do a proposal. You probably have to satisfy the bank that you would be able to make a profit over a certain amount of profit over a certain period of time, in order to not just pay back the bank, but your employees and your other overheads and stuff like that. So in that case, I believe it's going to be a little more rigid. The bank want to make sure, because the bank is in business to
Well, I understand
to make
that.
a profit. So
Understand
they would want to satisfy themselves that, hey, I'm now giving you a loan for maybe a 10-year period, a 15-year period down the road. What happens to that? What happens to the economy during that, during year 7, year 8? What the projection, would it go down? It would decrease? Would we have another pandemic? Hope not. All of those things, I suppose, I'm not a banker, but I suppose all of these things that the bank would look and take into consideration. Whereas I said, the car loan may just be for a 3-year period, a 4-year period. The World Bank and the other financial institutions, the IMF and what's not, they would have already, notwithstanding that their projections, could not hold, so to speak, but they would look at all those trends and feel more confident that, hey, I can give you a loan for 3 years, paying back $600, $800, as the case may be, opposed of giving you a loan for 15 years, 20 years, where you have to pay back maybe $1,500.
Well, sometimes a business loan or a business financial injection, which doesn't really have to be for 10 and 15 years, it can be for 5 years and one or even 1 year.
That is true too.
Yes, but I understand what you're saying, and don't think I'm not aware of the whole.
Naya, just give me good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, I'm back. Now, we have a reduction in the VAT rate for 6 months. Would you expect the number of imported cars to decline after that? That's just a question. So maybe they could answer it. Because the numbers might begin to slow down as you get nearer to June. So what impact, if any, has the reduction in the VAT had on the number of the imported vehicles? That's my question.
We do not. Well, what I would say, Carla, there's a reduction in the VAT. It simply means that you'd be paying less at the port. There's no doubt about it. But whether or not that this is a direct impact because of the reduction is left to be seen. I believe that this...
How would you see it?
Reduction. Well, this is what I'm saying, Webbo. I believe that this reduction in the VAT would have announced sometime mid to late December. Now, the car boat, would take maybe sometime up to 3 months, before they arrive here. So the real question is, did the importers had enough time, knowing that that would be reduced to import, to reach here when they reach?
But you got to accept though, that the caller asks a very important question.
Yes.
Because I recall that when the VAT was announced that it will be reduced, right here the discussion was held, and my contribution was, on the flip side of that, who knows, when people were arguing, oh, it's going to kill Nevis's revenue and economy, I said it may well go up.
Yes.
Right? And so, maybe Fifield, you might have the numbers. I don't know if you're allowed to give them out. When you now start to look at the numbers for the 13% VAT, for the 300 and something vehicles, for that period of time, as opposed to how many were coming in that period of time for the 17%, how are we doing? And that is why I always would say that sometimes, not all the time, sometimes instead of just making noise, we should have a good debate. But what we do most of the time is just criticize, hoping that people get emotional and angry, and without looking at the merits and debating that. So I think it was a very important question that the caller raised. Not saying that it is so, but it's a good question.
I believe, Webbo, that persons, they are going to try their utmost to capitalize on the reduction and to get their vehicles or other imports during this particular period that would end on the end of June in terms of the reduction in VAT. And rightly so, I believe. When we look at it, you're basically saving $4 out of every $100, if we want to look at it like that. So when you go up in the thousands, then we could understand the savings, and every dollar saved, I think, is of critical importance to all of us poor people. So I believe, Carla, that we are going to probably, maybe not the numbers that we saw earlier this week, but I believe that we are going to continue to see, some substantial numbers in terms of importation.
Well, I suppose it was not a bad gesture, even though, as Webbo pointed out, it's not all about facts, but to be able to train your mind to think beyond what seems to be confronting you in the immediate sense, really. But there's not much of a conclusion from the question the caller asks, because I guess you pointed out quite correctly. But I think generally people can anticipate that they can have a relief during this period at the custom and otherwise, and not only that, find themselves having more money in the pocket, so they can make certain investments during this obviously short period of the financial relief, and so it's hard to sit here and try to analyze the impact of it, because 17%, when it was then, you find there's less importation. Now it's 13%. There's more. As Webbo asks, how do we stand at the end of the day in terms of revenue? I mean, if you make people feel like they can make they can save some money, they sometimes get a little excited and spend more.
Just like the VAT, the reduction days, and we all know, when the reports are in, how much monies, was spent on a particular VAT reduction day, and it's just amazing So this too is somewhat of a stimulus.
Yes, but this shipment probably there wasn't much of a nexus between that the shipment and the reduced VAT. Yes.
Yeah. Webbo, I believe that as I said, person would continue to import. But Webbo, I don't know if we could probably probably go somewhat beyond this topic and probably touch another topic. Webbo, I listened in part, the Premier's press conference today, and he mentioned something that really struck me, and I believe that is something for us to all ponder on. I'm not sure if it was in the form of a question he was replying to, or he just brought it up, because as I said, I was listening on and off. But it was something to do with the deportation of citizens, Caribbean citizens, OACS citizens from the United States back to the various homeland. And for example, someone might been a criminal in the US and get deported back to one of the OACS countries, and that person returns to their homeland, and that person, for example, may jump on a plane tomorrow, next week, and probably come to St. Kitts Nevis, bearing in mind that there is some leeway for free movement of persons and stuff like that. How do we deal with that? Should it be a grace period, so to speak, if persons are deported, with a criminal record back to their various homeland before they probably come to another country where there is that agreement for free movement? I think that's something that we as a people, and not just St. Kitts Nevis and probably wider region, OACS, CARICOM, probably need to look at.
Well, I think it's an interesting area. We have seen things happen before. People who have come to the Federation and, they have been such a person in other places, and they find themselves here and they continue to be such a person. But we are talking about this because of what's going on in the US, right? But we probably should have been talking about it a long time before we realized what's going on in the US today. I mean, under Obama, a lot of that took place, They call them deportee, right? They were, after doing your sentence, they were sending you home. And that's a long time before Trump, okay? And but in the whole free movement of people, I believe the idea of criminality should have been upfront, and of course some kind of restraint or some kind of oversight or serious consideration should be made as it relates to criminality. I'm not saying to take away the rights in particular from moving freely throughout the CARICOM region, but that must have been or should have been something of great consideration, because if I can't tell you you can't come here because we know who you are, then maybe there should have been something that says you cannot leave because of who you are, and because Nobody think you can leave one country and come to St. Kitts Nevis. And we say, sorry, we can't accept you. We probably don't even have that right, you know, because in the makeup of the treaty, probably that wasn't considered as major. But it is major. It is major. But we obviously, you know, now is a little more aware of the potential of such people, because we hear Donald Trump. I mean, who's a criminal really? Donald Trump think anybody who he is deporting is a criminal, because he say first they commit a crime for being in the U.S. illegal. There are nice and decent people out there who find themselves undocumented in the U.S. Nice and decent people who never mash ants, you know. But from Donald Trump point of view, they are criminals. But I understand what you're talking about. People who do hardcore crime, killing, robbing, thief, and things like that. You understand? But in the whole process, in the makeup of the treaty, I suppose, and maybe there is. But this have come to light now because we are now expecting a lot of people. They are not really, Harlem is not really the kind of criminal that needs to be noted, you know. They are just happens to be in the U.S. and they can't get no green card and so forth. They're undocumented. That's what they refer to them as. And so they are being deported. But of course, even before that, criminals, I believe, who have been a part of or in the dealing of or with hardcore crimes, murder and, you know, things that, of course, attract long jail sentence, should be looked at in a kind of critical way before they are allowed to leave. Because once they leave and they have that right, we probably have no authority to tell them we cannot have you. They show up at our doorstep and they commit crimes as well, and grievous crimes, and put the society in fear. And I'm not talking about any particular individuals, because that can happen from people here in the Federation who wants to escape and go to somewhere else also, you know. And so, you know, once you got to pass through the port, you should be looked at and critically analyzed as it relates to your criminal record. And of course, the nature of crime will play a great role in deciding. But it cannot be a one-off thing where some immigration officer will decide at the airport, right? It's got to be something fundamentally, you know, written in some way amongst the rules and laws of, you know. But I always think this CARICOM thing and the free movement of people and this CARICOM passport thing, we got there pretty fast. Because if we look at the European Union, something that's been established in 1950 something, and it took them almost 50 years before that idea of a European passport come into effect. There's so many things they kind of normalized throughout the Union, which I don't think we have moved to do that. You know, Ireland spend euro, England now leave, you know, so many things, custom duties, everything normalized. And but until they get to that point, I think the final thing they have got to was actually European passports. But we have arrived there pretty fast. With not even much trading taking place amongst the countries, yeah, and not only that, not even much movements amongst the countries, you know. But we are very quick to have this idea. I mean, we don't even recognize the same court as our final court.
That's true.
You know? And so those who have not constitutionalized the Caribbean Court, nothing can become of a case being tried of, say, a citizen that still look to the Privy Council. It's a bundle of confusion, but yet we can move amongst the nations, the islands, freely. It's probably a recipe for disaster. And so little islands like St. Kitts Nevis can be overrun pretty easily by all kind of people. Now, I'm not against foreigners at all, because I know that we need people, you know. But if we had a choice, of course, we would like to see constructive-minded people, right?
Of course.
You know, people who are, you know, serious into, you know, self-progress and the progress of the environment in which they find themselves. But you know, the circumstance as it is, we pose a serious risk as it relates to this free-for-all movement up and down the place, you know.
Well, I think now that is something that, you know, the governments of the region, you know, would definitely take a closer look at, you know, the thought, just so we can be speaking of it. You know, I'm sure that they probably would have spoken about it, and if not, they would probably be speaking about it in short order. So that is something that I believe, you know, is forthcoming. Now, when we listen to the news in recent times, we heard right here in SKN, St. Kitts, that might have been 2 or 3 lawyers that have been charged. You know, I don't know what that is saying to us as a society in terms of, you know, lawyers. Of course, everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty. But, you know, as a young boy growing up, everybody, well, I certainly did, you know, and do still, you know, look up to lawyers, you know, look at them as, you know, decent, you know, people and stuff like that. And just to hear, you know, maybe 15, 20, 30 years ago, you know, that a lawyer, you know, would have been charged, I think that would have been like speaking Greek to us. So I don't know where do we go from here. The confidence that
charge for what? Do you know what they've been charged for?
I think what's the term? There's a term.
Okay, a circumstance where they have people money and not being able to
no, I think it's much more serious of a crime than just that. I think the DPP was on social media sometime recently. Might have been today's Tuesday, might have been yesterday. You know, speaking about it. So, but in my mind, you know, whatever the charge is, you know, I think we have to, as a society, as a people, can remember that these liars would come from the society. Person who's in authority would come from the society, the same society, the same community. So, what are we becoming as a society?
Well, it's a good society that's gonna charge a lawyer when they step out of line, when they happens to break the law. The DPP, I will congratulate them on that. Really, there are times when, you know, the DPP is totally, I wouldn't say bought, but it's good that they are expressing their independence. The judiciary should be an independent pillar here, and of course, of course, lawyers are just individuals, and it is unfortunate that they who profess to know the law would find themselves foiled of the law. Really, remember that they are out there and of course trying to get along like everyone else, and sometimes they find themselves in a position where they will try something even though they know it is not legal, and so when they are caught, we all expect them to be brought before the court and of course put on trial. Sometimes I wonder if we don't see. Look
Niall, let me get this. Good evening.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
No, this thing with the lawyers. Lawyers have always been committing crime, A lot of people rent and cars, sell people property, jail people will. But what has happened lately is the willingness of the DPP to lay charges. And even sometimes they lay charges and that seems to be all. I don't think they're no worse than those we had before. You don't think so?
Can you ask the question again, sorry?
I am saying, lawyers have always been charged by their clients.
Okay.
Embezzlement, stealing the funds. And they go to the court and they just charge them a fee. And that is it. You don't hear anything about it. But the difference to me is the DPP. Maybe because he's not a citizen of St. He feels more comfortable to do it. Because that legal fraternity, they lie to each other. They get away so much. So it isn't that day before any better. Ask people, you do any documents, they use them for their own purposes to raise loans and stuff. So some people I feel think that the DPP is going too far, doing too much. But you need more of that. There's nothing new. I'm sure all of you have heard, or not personally, of some of the things that lawyers have done, even doing this one about with the making up case. It's a common offense for lawyers, They do the passing up, I don't know. Because people are suggesting that there's a political motive with these two cases. But the people are considered not a support of the party in power. So they feel more confident to do it. But that is nothing new. You can't imagine that all of them turned back to the bad long time. And society was afraid of them, And you're afraid of the lawyer have your money, you can't get it. So. Well, I support the DPP. The only thing that they were talking about is that the AG also should have been reprimanded or something when he took parties to court. It's not the business. And the judge said that it was a criminal offense. But he was not charged. So we can't be very selective in who we charge and who we arrest and whatever. All right then.
Okay.
That's the purpose of the department of prosecution. Look at Israel. What's going on with Netanyahu? He is being brought in to answer questions, and I find, as the caller said, it's not like them before was better. Lawyers always get away with a lot of things, and sometimes we are fearful even to pull them before the court. Of course, there is a certain limits. Like for instance, if a lawyer seems to misrepresent you, go to court and chat foolishness, you can't really do nothing about it. So they have that kind of protection that a lot of people think it's more widespread than it truly is. You know, I myself have my ups and downs with lawyers who've taken my money. It's like they forget about the case completely, and I even get so fed up I forget about them too. You know. So just take the money, and call it judge. But perverting the course of justice, that is serious. You get in the way of standard procedure. You probably, with your knowledge, go before, and try to divert, just put impediments between, the client and what is he or she must present in court. I mean, perverting the course of justice is a very serious crime, and so I am happy to know that the DPP can, is a live one. It's an independent one, and I ask that they be more functional, really and truly, and looking at those that have the so-called white-collar jobs, because it's not just poor people who find themselves in breach of the law. Poor people sometimes pay the penalty, but when you find those who profess to know the law, who are keepers of the court, and they find themselves a foul of the law, I think their punishment should be even harsher than those who don't profess to know the law. But not knowing the law is never an excuse, really.
That's true.
And so I can live in such society, a society where the judiciary is independent, and they're out there like a hungry wolf, really trying to and quite willing to bring anyone who find themselves foul of the law, pull them in for justice. We can't have politicians and such people misbehaving, doing things, and of course putting impediments in the way of justice, because they can at times. And so what kind of society that would be? I mean, we see what's going on in America. Trump become president and all the charges from so many cases seems to have gone through the door. That's what we're talking about. This class society that there seems to be, well, it's what we know from the days of slavery, but it has really leads to massive injustice as it relates to people, access to justice. I mean, access to the court. Even the idea that even when you go to court and you probably can't afford or don't have a lawyer, you find yourself at great disadvantage. Not because they don't understand what you're saying, no. They simply feel like you should spend the money. You should spend the money and spend it with one of them. And then the magistrate tend to hear him just a little louder than hearing you. You understand? But you're basically saying the same thing, And so that type of society, that type of interpretation of the law, interpretation of justice must be set aside, because sometimes justice delayed, justice denied, and sometimes just the idea that you have to go pay a lawyer, you just accept, the default. You accept what you have gotten. You're suffering, but you just say, well, I don't got the money to pay a lawyer, and so let me just take what I get. You understand? There is no institution that you can go to where you'll be provided with a lawyer, like a citizen advisory bureau. I mean, these are institutions of a democratic society.
As you're talking about lawyers and how they operate and stuff like that, with your permission, I just wanted to ask a question which I ask rhetorically a lot. What do you think will happen in terms of representation for people if, and I know this is happening in the States a lot now, and I have a friend who is a lawyer in the States as well, and he told me why, but before I get to that, what if it was a common practice that if you're a lawyer, Naya, and I come to you, you only get paid if you win my case.
That would that would be a bit unfair, knowing that you sometimes have to do a lot of work before you present yourself in court for the trial, and if you lose, then you get nothing. That's a bit tough, but it's also tough on the other extreme sometimes, where before in engaging a lawyer, you have to come up with so much money sometimes.
No, that part is another part. What the part I'm talking about, because it is happening a lot. I see it on TV.
Yes.
People advertise, listen, if we don't win, you don't pay. Can it not arguably limit persons from taking or advising you to take a case when they very well reasonably know that is a case that, based on the truth or the facts or whatever, you wouldn't win?
Yes.
But knowing, nevertheless, that they will be paid. Yes, Raja.
Well, but you see, everybody, most people feel as if that they have a fighting chance, and if they get a lawyer, anything can happen during those proceedings. So everybody want a fighting chance. Maybe what could happen, Webbo, is that you get a percentage of your estimated costs, if you do not win.
Well, if that is the formula, my estimated cost, I need not say no more, right? Because in this case it's full of artificial intelligence, so you know what I'm going to say.
I'm waiting to hear what you have to say, Mr. Webb.
Well, a fellow knows that you normally ask for a discount. So when you see Fifield coming by your shop and he says he needs 3 gates, a gate normally for you is $2,000. So you make a little mistake just in case with the multiplication. So you told him the 3 gates will cost $8,000. However, because you're on the program with me, give me 6.
Yeah.
So that's where Fifield knew I was going.
Okay.
So when you pay a percentage of the 8, it comes down to what you really wanted, whether you win or lose, which is 6.
You see?
But
Yeah.
maybe
All of that will be implemented.
Right. So I'm just saying, sometimes you hear it. And on the other hand, maybe you're so confident that you tell them, if we don't win the case, you don't pay me. How about that?
There goes.
most times, Webbo, these lawyers, because they know the law and the evidence that is before them, upon review, they have a good idea whether or not that taking the case forward they are going to win or they are going to lose. Sometimes they very well know that they're going to lose, but they are hoping that maybe one of the witnesses may just tie up themselves.
Right. So therefore, I'm asking again, what do you think? If that was a thing, you think it will benefit all, or just maybe benefit the clients, or what?
I believe, Webbo, he would not benefit all. As Naya would have said earlier, some of these cases, you have to do a lot of research, you have to put in a lot of work. And if I were to put in a lot of work as a lawyer, and then maybe some little oversight and going to the court of law, and then I come out on the losing end, knowing all that work that me and probably my partners at my law firm would have put in to get $0, I'm not sure.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. you engage someone to do a roof for you, and he comes and he puts in a lot of work, and the next day a set of rain fall, and all the water, instead of run off the roof, run in the house. You think it's fair to pay him?
You wouldn't.
Because remember, he did a lot of work, you know.
Right. And I, as the owner of the house, would not feel fear. I would feel aggrieved. But bearing in mind that person, depends on what he put in, apart from the labor that person might have, or the materials might have been the builder's material. So the homeowner should pay for at least the material, the lumber and the galvanized, and then for the labor.
Well, I out. Now you take him on from me.
Not 1 cent. He does not deserve not 1 cent. Because he built something.
But remember, he put in a lot of work.
He put in a lot of work, but he'll build something that is not fit for purpose. He'll build something that's not fit for purpose. It's not a roof. A roof prevents the rain from coming in. That roof appears to be a roof, and a leaky roof, and so he shouldn't be paid at all. And he cannot win a case in court asking for money.
But walk with
well,
me.
maybe he can.
Walk with me. Remember, Fifield's argument is they put in a lot of work.
Yes.
So he doesn't mind paying a man who give him that kind of job because the man put in a lot of work.
No.
You can't pay him.
You don't mind, right?
What we have to look at.
No, but just answer me and then you can. You don't mind paying him, right?
I gotta go.
I believe that he should be paid,
but not by you.
Based on
how much water in there?
based on what he put in and how. Meaning, Webbo, right? As I said, if the contractor provided the galvanized, the lumber, the galvanized and the lumber might still be intact. He should be paid for those, but not for the labor costs. That is what I'm saying. So if we were to go back to the lawyer and the case.
The lawyer is labor costs we're talking,
Right. But, maybe it need to be graded, so to speak. Let us go into Calypso. Some Calypsonians, they are not writers. They get a song, they buy a song from someone, and they perform the song. Now, based on the arrangement, the Calypsonian would know if you do not pass the eliminations, I want $400 for my song. If you pass the eliminations, I probably want 500. If you go to the finals, I probably want 600. You do not win the crown, you stay at the 600. You win the crown, you get a percentage of the earnings for winning the crown. So this is what I'm saying. Probably there need to be something set that to do the groundwork you're gonna cost X amount. You need probably a detailed bill. To do the groundwork, as I said, you get X amount. We move from there to the court. For me to go into the court to dirty my clothes, so to speak, X amount. Now, if I win, it is X amount. If we do not win, you just pay for the research up front and for me to go in the court to iron my nice clothes to go in the court. But you do not pay anything further if we lost the case. And if these are established up front, then I believe that the defendant, or in this case, I don't think that they would feel so aggrieved, because they would well know in advance, exactly what they are getting themselves in. And as I said, well, people feel as if they get a fighting chance.
Yeah, but as it relates to the house roof, you went into Calypso and then you came back to the lawyer thing. Well, I do understand what you're trying to say, and I can see you relating the lawyer thing to the Calypso thing but I can't see the Calypso thing really links with anyway to a defected roof. A new roof. I can't see that. So I mean, in reality, we know what the arrangement sometimes is. Look, I've got a roof to build. You come and you give the estimate. You say you want X amount up front, I give you X amount up front. You finish the job, the whole roof will leave. Okay? In fact, you owe me. You owe me because I made that deposit to you. And it's not fit for purpose.
And then too, I mean, I could see your point. I might have been, the person might have been very well in the bed sleeping at night. The rain came in, wet down the person probably...
Never wet down the person.
No, I'm just putting this across. They wet the person gets sick, the hospital bill and so forth, and then you just probably have to just concede and say, hey, I can't in good conscience take monies from this person when this person, because of my negligence or whatever, now have to be paying doctor bill maybe for months, maybe for years.
Oh, so the decision now becomes the decision of the carpenter, whether or not he should take money from the owner of the house when he built a house not fit for purpose. It's quite a very unique way of looking at it, really.
It is, and sometimes we have to be humane, we have to be ethical. We are humans, and sometimes I believe that sometimes we don't want to emphasize, we don't want to have empathy, because we probably, quote unquote, has the financial means, and quote unquote we are high up in society and we look down at others and stuff. But to me, the bottom line is we are all flesh and blood, we are all human, and that is how we should look and know that, hey, I put on a leaky roof,
Yeah, and I don't deserve any money because the owner, he or she may have given you everything she has. You can be a old poor person.
Right, and I'm saying, if I, as the owner of the house, would have bought my galvanized, bought my lumber, and you just went and put it on, of course, I wouldn't pay you, point blank. And that is what I'm saying. It depends on the circumstance. If the lumber and the galvanized are still there, and you as a carpenter bought them from your pocket, then I believe that you should be paid for that, because you still have them in your possession. But you ought not to get paid for the labor, because you did a rubbish job, a trash job. And that's how I feel.
Okay. Nothing is wrong in feeling that way. I suppose that's what they have courts for.
Exactly.
You go to court and you find out you're wrong or you're right.
Exactly.
But just one thing, I've been confronted by a few people, and they're saying how expensive it is to be serviced at the Alexander Hospital. It's quite expensive to even at the outdoor patient, you know. And I, for one, can speak of an experience where I took a young lady there, and she spent about 2 hours in outdoor patient, and she never was admitted to the hospital. And she, as she says, she spent about 2 hours there suffering from some tummy ache, and no X-ray or anything was done. A blood test was done, and she was given some medicine intravenously. And when we were about to leave, the secretary said, "Hey, come over here." And we went over, and she started writing up some things there. And I happens to look at her, and I see 4. And I just, you know, thought, okay, it's like $40-something. It's okay, not too bad. But after that, I realized it was $440, you know. And I've been getting that kind of feedback that it's quite expensive to be attended to at the Alexander Hospital, even at outpatient. I actually met a doctor one day after, and I explained to him, and he said to me, "Well, you have a platform." And he thought that, well, if the young lady didn't add an X-ray or having to put on any machines, he's finding that quite expensive. Now, I'm not saying that we're being ripped off at all, you know, and I am just hearing from a lot of different people that they find it quite expensive to go to the. I mean, you're not a minister, so you probably won't know the intricacies of it, you know. Like, for instance, if you go to the hospital and there's a doctor on duty there, and they do something to you, it seems like the bill that is presented has a portion for the doctor itself. You know, sometimes we need some clarity on these things, because if a doctor is on duty there, he or she is obviously being paid by the government. So why do we have to pay them again? You know, these are questions I would like to have some answers to, because I understand and I realize, I was in the hospital last year. It's an expensive institution to run, very expensive institution, and sometimes I wonder if the little 10,000 people we have here in Nevis can really run quite up-to-date and modern institution called a hospital. I mean, the amount of tax that we pay and so forth. So obviously we expect that the government will share a portion, you know, with the people, you know. And but it looks to me like the Alexander Hospital is quite commercialized in these times, you know, very commercialized. You know, you go there and you find you have to spend quite a lot of money, and sometimes you're not even admitted, you know. I myself been there, and for the 5 days I spent, I had to pay $500, and the doctor that dealt with me, who was on call at the time, I had to pay him. Well, he dealt with me twice because I returned there for reasons, and I had to pay him $1,500. So the bill was $1,500, and I keep wondering and contemplating what is going on, because I then moved to St. Kitts, where I spent almost 5 weeks there, and the doctor that looked after me, up to now, he have not charged me a cent. So, and I also know that the NIA runs its own health system over here, and different to what is done in St. Kitts. And so, but the disparity, the difference, you wonder what is really going on, you know. So, can you speak on that?
Well, Naya, I cannot speak to any specifics, but what I would suggest is that if there isn't a rate sheet
You suggest we go to St. Kitts?
No, what I'm saying, what I'm saying now is that if there isn't a rate sheet at the hospital, maybe there ought to be a rate sheet in the, outlining the fees for, the different services that is rendered there. And I believe that it should go beyond that. In today's world, there's social media, there's of course the radio, the Eastern Caribbean Holy Powerhouse, Von Radio. The government also have their government service where they carry the news and stuff like that. And they can, let the different rate of fees for these different services be known to the general public. So when one goes to the hospital, they are not, in shock in terms of their bill, what they would receive after certain treatment. So that is what I would say. I cannot speak, to anything further.
I totally understand. You're talking about further disclosure as to the amounts that one would have to pay. Dealing with certain aspect of health and so forth. But sometimes it's very difficult to be specific in a sense, because for instance, I mean, when I took this young lady there, she just had really a tummy ache, really suffering from that, and as we spent about 2 hours in the outpatient being treated, and then somebody else probably came in and they spent about an hour or so, and it just varies, various circumstances, and you wonder how you can actually have a chart sheet on every circumstance that may show up at the hospital, really.
Of course, you won't be able to do that, but the most common ones at least. And I believe, Naya, that this program is one such program that issues like these are being aired. I am almost certain that if ministers of government are not listening, there are persons who listen to this program who are close and communicate with ministers of government, so they would hear what is being said, and of course a caring government would do what it has to do if it's an outcry of the masses.
Well, one would hope so, because it's very difficult to work with a circumstance where a hospital is commercialized, and to be quite honest with you, there are things I don't always like to say, because I don't like to call on my little island, I mean, but I could recall that once I took my mom there for dressing, and the nurse said to me, you would have to pay for dressing soon. So when we went back the next time, I walked with some money to pay for the dressing, and then when she finished, I asked her how much, and she said, well, it's not in effect yet. We received a circular, but nothing was done, and please get me clear, I don't think today anyone is paying for dressing, but I'm not lying, and obviously that makes me start thinking that there seems to have had quite a commercial ingredient to this institution, and I totally understand how expensive it is to run a hospital, but I've been hearing cry from all sorts that it's just extremely expensive to be served at the Alexander Hospital. Really, it is definitely relative to St. Kitts, I must say. I mean, if you want to talk about the States, then they're gone crazy over there. In a sense, we cannot even compare. What I mean?
Yes.
But we within, in terms of between St. Kitts and Nevis, you're wondering what on earth is going on as it relates to the cost
Now,
of being there.
Yeah, that's really news to me. But what I would say, Naya, is that I'm going to come back to that too. But what I would say is that, the encounter that I would have had at the Alexander Hospital, pleasantry, the nurses, the doctors, and I'm not saying that you are saying that otherwise, but they really deal with, with me, really nice, really professional and stuff like that. But I am wondering, Naya, because I would have heard things like, they're encouraging persons to go to the health centers, especially for dressing. And for some reason, a number of persons still turn up at the outpatient for dressing. I'm not saying that it is right, if at all it is so, but I am wondering if it is somewhat of a deterrent, for persons to go to the community health centers for dressing instead of coming in at the outpatient at the hospital for dressing. I do not know. I'm just wondering, because I've never heard, that one have to pay for dressing.
No, don't go and say that Naya said that. I've told you my experience.
Right, I understand.
And I don't think the nurse told me that they received the circular, but it's not in effect as yet, because I did walk with my money to pay. So I am not sure if it's in effect today, but from when I went there, it did not come into effect, and I don't think it is in effect at this point. But that kind of triggers my mind and makes me start thinking that there's quite a commercial ingredient here, and knowing that the expense of the cost of being served there is quite exorbitant, because I can still get over the night when I was there with that lady, and we really had to ask them to let us go. But we paying a small portion of that $400, because we didn't go there prepared at all in any way that the bill will be $440.
But in a case like that, Naya, shouldn't the bill be itemized?
The bill was itemized.
Oh, it was.
The bill was itemized. The bill was itemized, and
all the services.
I hope I can bring it just to show you one of these evening, because I held on to it. Yes, but a portion was for the doctor. A portion was for the doctor.
Okay.
And it begs me to ask that when a doctor is on what do you call that?
Duty.
On duty, is whether or not he or she is not paid by the government, and why when we have to go to the hospital for a brief moment, we still have to pay that doctor. It's quite a question, because as I say, I spent 5 weeks in St. Kitts Hospital, and
it wasn't like that.
Well, I have not paid a doctor 1 cent, as if, I'm employed by the government and I'm
unless
here
it's
to serve.
incorporated.
Yeah. I mean, when I go to his office after I was discharged, yes, I paid, but for the 5 weeks there was no bill at all for the doctor.
Well, believe me, now, somebody is hearing, somebody is listening, and I know someone would look into it.
Well, this might be the light moment of the night. Somebody might be hearing yourself, and somebody might be listening.
Yes.
Yeah.
They might be listening that hearing.
Walk with me, and Naya, don't be surprised if you ain't get a bill. Because somebody might be hearing. And somebody might be listening that you spent 5 weeks and you ain't pay a cent. So somebody
I didn't get a bill.
But somebody
He might get a bill.
Of course I got a bill for the hospital.
Why do every time I make an input, then people start to share? But I'm just being a good Samaritan to tell you, careful, somebody
shouldn't be saying this.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I was just eavesdropping,
Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Why would you?
But that's the reality. It's all, geared towards a better society, and of course, sometimes you speak easy about certain things, but and hope that it can, of course, be looked at. We're in a different circumstance over here. The two islands have two different health systems, and so to a great extent, I can stretch my imagination and try to understand. But sometimes you got to ask why. Sometimes you got to ask why. Have the final word, mister.
Well, I guess we would all know in due time.
No one.
What the outcome would be. And there was a song, there was a song in due time a couple of years ago.
We hope for the best.
Of course.
We hope for the best.
Of course. Of
Yeah.
course. I just want the nurses and the doctors at the hospital to know that in no way, form, we are knocking on them. They are
No, absolutely good people.
Yeah.
Absolutely good. I mean, absolutely professional.
Yes.
I mean, to be quite honest, I go up there and I gotta say, well, I mean,
And
so much talk sometimes. But I think the people here try their best.
I have a space in my heart for nurses. I just love nurses. Once you are a nurse, I love you.
That's how you go.
Yes. Automatic.
Well, that's the final word, was that the final word, sir?
I have no idea.
This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On Demand. Join Keith Scarborough at 8 o'clock on Thursday evening for Government at Work. A place to spend all of your evenings right here in the Eastern Caribbean Spa House. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. Thought that get results. You all have a wonderful evening.
With all the power from the tower, this is the powerhouse of the East.